Namaskar and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. India's diplomatic boycott of China Winter Olympics, the high-voltage election campaigns in poll-bound states, and of course, the union budget captured the headlines through the week. There were hot debates in Parliament, while the Army Chief has warned all of us of the new age conflicts the country is now facing. All that coming up, but first up, what made news? Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented the union budget for 2022-23 earlier this week. Billed as Atmanirbhar Bharat ka budget or the budget for a self-reliant India, it inks the blueprint for the next 25 years. That is when India will complete a century of its independence. Prime Minister Narendra Modi hailed the budget as the document of a modern, self-reliant nation. The opposition said it fell short of addressing the damages from COVID. Most experts in the media have appreciated the thrust on capital expenditure and the growth of infrastructure in the budget. Addressing the customary joint sitting of Parliament at the commencement of the budget session, President Ramnath Kovind lauded India's fight against COVID and the resilience with which we have maintained the growth trajectory. The President underlined the big steps towards indigenous manufacturing in defence sector, the fresh purchases, steps to mitigate the problems of farmers and various PLI schemes which will not only transform India but also create jobs in big numbers. India announced a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Winter Olympics after China's provocative move to make a Galvan soldier the torchbearer for the event. But Congress MP Rahul Gandhi accused the NDA government of bringing China and Pakistan together with its policies. The Congress leader was called out by External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who reminded him of earlier incidents such as Pakistan's handing over of Shaksgam Valley to China and China's building of Karakoram Highway through POK. Law Minister Kiren Rijiju also demanded an apology from Rahul Gandhi for his remarks on the judiciary and the Election Commission. Gandhi had said that these were instruments for destroying the voice of Union of States. BJP member Nishikant Dubey has moved a breach of privilege motion also against the Congress MP. With the first phase of polling just days away, campaigning has reached a high pitch in Uttar Pradesh. The BJP has engaged a galaxy of central and state leaders to traverse every corner. Thrust is on door-to-door campaigning and small gatherings. Akhilesh Yadav and Jayant Chaudhary led the charge for the SP-RLD combined. BSP Chief Mayawati also addressed her first public meeting this week. Meanwhile, suspense over the CM candidate of the Congress in Punjab continued through the week, with the media's reports claiming incumbent CM Charanjit Singh Channi was the frontrunner. Army Chief General M.M. Narwane has sounded off that the trailers of future conflicts are out playing in the cyberspace on information platforms. Meanwhile, there are recent reports highlighting how India is under a sort of attack by various forces who have stepped up their psyops through digital media to strengthen the anti-India voices. What do these reports say and how best can we counter this challenge? We will discuss all that in detail with our special guests right away. So those were the top headlines you saw dominating the media space through the week. Viewers, we here on Media Scan have been trying to bring to you from time to time the threats that the enemies of the nation are posing to the social fabric, to the peace and harmony of our country by utilizing the digital space, conducting a kind of cyber war against India and the entire subcontinent. Many reports have come in the recent days from various think tanks, from geostrategic experts, military experts, intelligence people, which show us that the threat is getting deadlier by the day. India is under attack through the cyber world, and this cyber psychological war is getting sinister by the day. No wonder our Army Chief General Narvane had to really underscore this challenge while he was speaking in an event earlier this week. He tried to show that the future conflicts, the trailers of which are visible at various spaces, are being conducted through an information war. Our neighbors are badly engaged in it, and we have to be not only conscious of the challenge, but we have to step up our devices, our strategy to face the challenge and protect our country from the enemies of the nation. Meanwhile, the reports have also flagged similar concerns. On Media Scan this evening, we are going to discuss just that and try to understand what this new front war is actually meant for us, how serious it is, and how can we, who are common citizens not groomed and trained in military details, can help in fighting the war. I have here with me a very special panel of guests who will help us to understand this complicated and very sensitive topic. My first guest for the evening is a well-known veteran military expert. We also know him as the hero of Siachen. You have heard him on Media Scan on earlier occasions. May I welcome Lt General Sanjay Kulkarni. Good evening, sir, and welcome back to Media Scan.
Thank you, Jen.
So we hope we'll have the benefit of your perspective once again on our show, General Kulkarni. My second guest for the evening is a well-known news reporter, someone whose forte has been internal security and defense issues. Recently, he has come out with some very fantastic reports about how, as I said, the enemies of the nation are trying to rupture our social fabric and threaten our peace and harmony. Let me welcome senior journalist Vicky Nanjappa. Welcome back to Media Scan, Vicky.
Thank you, Smita ji. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
Let me come to you first, General Kulkarni. Sir, you must have read the statement of General Narvane, how he has flagged the threat of the cyber psychological war on the country, the information warfare as he called it, and he said these are the trailers of future conflicts. Considering the statement of the Army Chief and similar reports that have been appearing from time to time, also keeping in perspective some developments which have happened in the country in the past 1 or 2 years, sir, how serious is this challenge of the cyber war on our country? As a military veteran, as someone who has been there and seen it all, do you think this new challenge is something we must be really worried about? Your take, sir.
100% with you on this, that there is no denying the fact that the future wars are unrestricted. There are no boundaries that we talk about in the conventional sense. You know, Sun Tzu always said that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without a fight. And therefore, we look at it that there isn't a conventional fight that one is looking at, but one is seeing an unrestricted warfare. And the chief was right. No, nobody wants a fight because they know what it really means, especially all nations, especially a country like India, which is gradually and steadily modernizing itself, going up the ladder of a comprehensive national power, one amongst the top 5 countries in the world, thriving economy, strong leadership, very, very strong armed forces. You know, all of it gives a feeling that definitely no adversary would like to approach India conventionally. Then what are the options that are available to it? The options are below the conventional war. And all of it, be it political, be it economic, be it diplomatic and propaganda. You see the way propaganda was, and the Chinese, even if we take China as our enemy, our adversary, which happens to be our neighbor now since 1949, we look at it this way, that China is doing all that it can to harm the nation. And we have...
Sir, if I may just put in a question here for a second, compared to the conventional warfare of which you are a well-versed veteran, why is this more dangerous for the peace of the country? Or is it actually?
You know, what happens is, in a conventional war, when you look at it, it's a soldier who's responsibility is the territorial integrity and the sovereignty of the nation. When we see this, the entire nation has to be a soldier. All of us have to be soldiers, whether it's the political field, it's economic field, or any field that you think about, cultural field. Everybody is a soldier. Everybody must think this nation belongs to him and that he is responsible to defend it from all kinds of adversity and the kind of, you say the information warfare. Because the information warfare.
Are you saying that this proxy or shadow war can even get into fields like culture and such things?
100%. 100%, because ours is what is it that we are strength is when we talk about, we say unity in diversity.
Yes.
It is this diversity which the adversary is exploiting it. He's exploiting the diversity. We have to ensure that there is unity in diversity. If there is no unity in diversity within, then the enemy is at free will to do what it is wanting to do, because it is then influencing the mind. Knowledge is power. And that must be understood. And that is very slowly and steadily creeping in when we talk, because there are ideologies and it's all based on ideology, whether it is religious or whether you talk of democracy, whether we talk of capitalism, we talk of socialism, we talk of mixed economies, anything and everything, because as the population of the country...
I will come back on that, sir. I will come back on that, on how this can, span across various fields. And it can threaten us, sort of make us hollow from the insides of our constitution. But allow me to bring in Vicky here also. Vicky Nanjappa, as India rises on the international arena as a resurgent, a more confident nation, or perhaps because of that, we see that powers in the world who have their eyes on the unity, on the peace of our country, are coming out with some very sinister plans to threaten our peace and tranquility. I have been following your reports lately, and we are also privy to some of the information in the public domain, which seems to point at very sinister plans, very specific plans to disturb life and harmony in areas like the Kashmir Valley, in Tamil Nadu, for example, in some parts of the Northeast, and generally all over North India. How would you explain this threat to us? And from your reporting in the last few weeks, can you please tell, for the benefit of our viewers, what the threat is about?
The thing is, what I've been seeing, Smitaji, is that, the revival of so many, forces, which is, they've been trying to do on the social media. Because, I would always say that the social media propaganda is actually, the most dangerous one. Because, you go out on the streets and there are people who get very convinced about what is happening on the social media. We as journalists, we are privy to our sources, we can, but it can absolutely spread some kind of panic. LTT was gone. Khalistan is gone. They all, seem to be pretty active today on the social media. Our Ministry for External Affairs had said in the Rajya Sabha yesterday that, there's a very fringe group in Canada which is, trying to, rake up this Khalistan movement. These things what keep happening on the social media, maybe, like what we saw, say, 10, 15 years back, not that kind of bomb blast with an Indian Mujahideen or a Simi carries out, but you're going on, trying to radicalize, change the mindset of the youth so that, they just go all hammer and tongs against the government. And this is what I keep seeing this one. Like, I would say, like, how we have an army to guard our borders, we actually need an army to guard our social media also.
So let me just paraphrase this for our viewers. You are saying that those challenges or those threats which our soldiers, our security forces had very, very successfully put down effectively, are now trying to come back in a different way, or rather through the back door, by utilizing these digital platforms. Is that it?
That's what it is. Like in the sense, so many webinars were suddenly organized, speaking about the LTT all of a sudden. Those, those untouched crores which were lying in the banks, they tried to withdraw it. There was a lady from Sri Lanka who came here, and then, she managed to, get a passport, an Aadhaar card, everything there. She lived in Tamil Nadu. So now the NIA has arrested her, NIA has has registered case, and, they are actually probing it. So where are all these coming from? And you know what, I would also say that, considering it's coming out of Sri Lanka, I would never, rule out a Chinese angle also to it. Like, you trouble us there, at this one, what is that, at at Eastern Ladakh, you travel there, and then you come and you do some hanky panky in the northeast, and now you've gone all the way down south. So that was basically the long and short of it. What the agencies have realized is, trying to use a concept called as Tamil nationalism to, revive the LTT. So, you keep the country troubled from all the four corners. And this is happening digitally.
This is as far as how they are trying to, revive their agenda by using digital platforms. But how could you explain to us very briefly how it translates on the ground? I mean, once they try to spread the word, how does it translate into tangible problem or challenge on the ground?
The problem on the ground, what tends to happen is, like you are trying to, put out, the government comes out with certain reforms, and you come onto the social media and say, no, this is anti-Tamil, this is anti-Northeast and things like that. So how do you carry forward those reforms this one? Because the problem is, the biggest problem is the youth is on the social media, and they are the thought process of the nation, and they start revolting about everything, that you're not able to convince, because social media is able to convince you better.
Okay, I got it. So can I just bring General Kulkarni back? So he, as an expert on the subject, can help us to go deeper into this. General Kulkarni, you just heard Vicky tell us what he has been reporting lately about how they target, they start with political ideas, political agendas, trying to rope in the youth and then create a sort of sentiment among them. When that translates into, first of all, how does it translate into a threat to peace on the ground, apart from a political, further from a political thought, number one. And number two, sir, since this is now not limited to the soldiers who stands with a gun on the border, it is about every citizen in the country who has a device in hand, the mobile phone or a laptop. So how can we remain vigilant enough and not, become gullible and get in and fall into this trap of trying to threaten our peace? Can you help us understand?
It's something is indeed challenging and something which bothers everybody for a very simple reason. It's a democracy. We have to first understand we are a democracy. Unlike China, where 95% of the people almost look alike, talk alike, eat alike, have thinking the same, schooling is the same, everything is same. It's virtually identical of that 95% of the population. Therefore, all of them, when they come, they surrender their liberties for a good of life. So they want good life and they surrender their liberties to the leadership, and leadership takes them to wherever they want. As long as they're happy with the leadership, it's perfectly fine. The day they're unhappy with the leadership, they know how to overthrow the leadership, and that is how dynasties in China have been changing one after the other. Now, when you look at Pakistan, Pakistan survives on hate India. Its entire base is hate India.
Yes.
It survives. Only country in the world where the army has a nation. So now we have two adversaries, we have virtually a two-front war, and then we have enough siblings in India of those people within the country who also don't seem quite satisfied, because when we talk of equality, they feel there is no equality. When we talk of liberty, they feel no, they do not have. When we talk of fraternity, first and foremost, I must understand, and we all must understand, when we talk of the word fraternity, I am Indian first, always and every time. I am not
sir,
a Maharashtrian.
allow me to put in a question here. Just a short query, sir. Unlike China, India is a vibrant democracy, and we cannot, put any fetters or limit the expression, the freedom of expression, the thoughts and ideas of our citizens. But nevertheless, we have to be alive to this new challenge. Where do you find the meeting ground so that the civil liberties, the freedom of the people is not curtailed, but yet they do not fall into the hands of these powers?
You're asking me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of Kashmir. Let's take Kashmir, where we are terribly within Kashmir, we have a sizable amount of people who are politically inclined, and that politics is taking them and driving in that far. Now, let's take the case of abrogation of Article 370. Yes. Now, the abrogation of Article 370 brings lots of people into the mainstream because of development. They see all of it. But there is an adversary which entire survival is based on hate India and Kashmir. So what does it do? You find kinds of voices which are within India also, which have held very high appointments and high ministerships and everything, still talking a little different language than what a normal Indian would speak, an average Indian would speak. Now that is not in sync with the national thinking. Now that sync is with somebody else. Now what does the enemy do? Enemy exploits that, and the exploitation of the enemy is by what? Giving you money, giving you weapons, making you think. The internet is available to tell you their ideology. Internet is there, mobiles are there to connect one with the other. As a result of which, you find the sustenance is there, and population has gone beyond. Every now and then we talk of dividend, population dividend. It is now reaching a level of disaster. If we understand that aspect, and therefore everybody wants a job. Which job? Government job. How can anybody and everybody get a government job? It is not possible, and therefore the exploitation starts. Obviously, in a family.
So, if I understand you, sir, what you are trying is you have related, the social tensions, issues among the in the society among the youth, and tried to see how this can reach a level where it can be exploited by the enemies of the nation for their own benefit, for their sinister designs. I'll come back on that, sir, because that is a much larger debate actually. But before that, I have a specific query for Vicky here. Vicky, you are a journalist. More than anybody else, you understand that the right, the liberty of journalists to write what they want to write, to show and to express what they want to do is paramount for all of us. And yet, when the new IT laws were brought in, there was a lot of protest, there were a lot of questions raised about it. It was challenged in the court. However, in the recent days, you must have noticed that the government of India, after our agencies worked, investigated on that, the I&B ministry was compelled to block the access of various YouTube channels, more than 50 of them, because it was found after thorough investigation that they were most of them were running from across the border, and more than any kind of editorial or journalistic exercise, it was actually a part of the psyops of our foreign agencies who want to destabilize our country. In the light of what has happened, now in hindsight, what would you like to say? Would we have been able to move any further had these IT laws not been brought in? What would have been the situation if the old laws were still in effect without the new amendments? Vicky?
Yeah, that's right, Smita. The thing is, one thing if I would bring is that why these IT laws become important is because the internet has become such a tool to incite, change narrative, make sure that a false narrative goes on, and very unfortunately the wrong tends to pick up faster than the right. That is faster, always. So that is, not this one. And I'll be very honest with you. When it comes to national security, internal security, there is no compromise. There is no politics. That is what you take. You do what it takes to, protect your own sovereignty, your integrity. That's one. And now you see, on one hand, diplomatically, India will, have better diplomatic ties with Saudi Arabia and UAE, but then Pakistan will go and make Turkey. It's this one, the Muslim Brotherhood case. That is one. So it's like challenging from every end, and I don't think the thing is the freedom of the press doesn't mean that you compromise on national security. I think
so. Allow me a cross question, Vicky. As an alert, as a conscious news reporter, but also as a responsible citizen, how would you be able to differentiate, between the kick, the charm of a big story, the charm of something interesting, something hot happening, but then be careful that you are not falling into the hands of some psyops as a news reporter, because the media is always the right on top of the target, isn't it?
Right. That's true. Actually, when I started out on my profession, there was one thing I learned. There was one communal riot in which I got hit by a stone. It said that it's always nice to be on top of the news, but you need to know when to stop also.
Right.
All right. There are a lot of things we know. There are a lot of things which happen, but that doesn't mean that you compromise national security. It's not hep or it's not chic to sit and compromise on national security. I would say that is the most important thing. If you have hit out at Pakistan, if you have hit out at China, then your nation comes first. It doesn't, it doesn't mean that, you try and look for loopholes in what has happened, because in operations, a lot of kind of things happen, but it is a duty of as a journalist, the freedom that you've given to respect that and work well within the ambit of the law and make sure that your country is supreme. And I think that should be the long and short of it.
That's so very well put, Vicky, very well articulated. And I'm afraid now I'll have to wind up the program. I have just very little time left, maybe just for a quick question from General Kulkarni before I wind up. General Kulkarni, you just heard Vicky tell us, as a reporter, we have to know when to stop. But since being someone who knows the subject, and because this is media scan, can you help us understand how the media can help in fighting this cyber against the enemies of the nation? Or if not fight, at least how can we help by not becoming a tool in the hands of this psychological, this cyber space war? Can you give us some tips on that to our journalists, sir?
It's a very, very important question, and you really, really need to work on it. First and foremost, we must all understand the media plays a very big role in India. Very big role, because media influences. There were times when it would take years, say for instance 62 war. Not many in the country also knew what was really happening. Now, even a small incident can occur anywhere in the country, everybody gets to know. So these are all, the technology must be harnessed for the good of the people. That is the most important. The same technology can be utilized and misused for the people and by the people. And therefore, it's very essential that we must have a credible deterrent. If we have to have a strategic credible deterrent, we must also have a credible cyber deterrent. We have to monitor. There is no denying the fact, whatever we might say, and of course, if the balance must be drawn, the privacy must be ensured of everybody. Nobody should feel that his privacy is gone. But when it comes to national security, it does not matter whatever it be. If somebody is being anti-national, now the question is, who will decide who is anti-national? Now that's another problem, that is, because what maybe in my definition an anti-national may not be in somebody else's definition. So we really need to have the judiciary also, everybody on board, a commission which decide, yes, this is anti-national, and quick decisions, not lingering on for years on that whether national or anti-national. It should be a decision given within 15 days that this particular publication house or a media house is not behaving as per the norms that are laid down by the committee, by the people of this country, not that the government decides. The government is the regulatory body.
I think
we are part of it.
Towards the conclusion of our debate, I think you have finally given us one specific suggestion also, apart from all that we discussed, the finer points. And I am sure this leaves us at a point where we can perhaps carry on this discussion further on some other weekend, and I'll call you back on that, sir. Meanwhile, I think you have given us a very, very valuable touchstone, for all media persons to remember that while nobody should feel threatened of his or her privacy, at the same time, we must not forget that the security of the nation is above everything else. On that profound, on that serious note, allow me to wind up this discussion for this evening with the promise that we shall come back on the subject some other weekend very soon. Thank you, General Kulkarni, for finding the time on this chilly winter evening to speak to us on that very important subject. We shall contact you again on the same, sir. Thank you.
Jai Hind.
Also, Vicky, always ready to join Media Scan whenever we have requested him. Thank you so much for sharing all those details with us and telling us what happens to a reporter on the ground when he's faced with that typical, the dilemma of the kick of a very hot story, but also keeping the nation's security in mind. Thank you again.
Thank you, Smitaji. Jai Hind.
So with those words from both of our special guests, viewers, allow me to conclude the Media Scan this evening. But do continue to watch DD India as we shall continue to scan the media for you. Good night.